Hello and welcome to this SlimDevOps episode 47. I'm joined again by Primoz. Primoz, hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine.
It's good to have you back. My goodness, you sound good. There's been some upgrades happening over there.
Yeah, I'm not in the ATC tower anymore.
So, if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, this was originally streamed live on twitch.tv/SlimDevOps. So if you want to join in interactively with other members of the community, please give us a follow at slim.tv. No, not slim.tv, twitch.tv/SlimDevOps. Right, so what have you been up to since we last spoke?
I've been playing with NixOS.
Oh, have you now? What have you been up to?
I've been testing it out on my old laptop, getting it to work with the drivers for NVIDIA and all that. And I'm planning to put it on my main desktop.
Interesting. So, first of all, why are you taking a look at NixOS?
It's what I think is going to be, at least the style of distribution is going to be the future of Linux.
As in Linux on the desktop, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so what characteristics of NixOS have been most attractive to you?
The reproducibility of it, and the fact that you can basically just write a config file and install that through that. You don't have to go to the installer every time. And the fact that you can, if you edit the configuration and then build it onto your system, you can then switch between different configurations in a grab menu, essentially.
Different, like boot environments, you mean?
Yeah, if one breaks, you can go back to previous one as a backup.
Nice.
Not just have to fix everything every time if something breaks.
Well,
but they break things.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I've been talking to one of the NixOS developers. Long-time viewers here, hello, will know that we've been teasing that we're going to have people on from Nix to talk about NixOS and why it could well be the future of desktop Linux. And that's getting ever closer. So I think within the next week or 2 weeks, that is the live stream we'll be doing here. And although I haven't installed it on a computer recently, I have been experimenting in a VM with NixOS to sort of learn the few bits that I want to get down. But I've got my XPS 15 down here, and that is going to become my dedicated Nix computer, and I'm going to invest some time in looking at that. Now, whilst you've been playing with Nix, that isn't what you're running right now. Is that correct?
No.
So I am going to say that I do notice the microphone that you've got there. You've obviously got some audio upgrades going on over there as well.
Yeah.
You're sounding great. It's like the first time I've ever heard you. So what have I been up to? It was we had an event. So let me just look up the URL. So yesterday I presented at Comp42. So let me just bring up the URL for that. It was the Comp42 SRE conference yesterday, Site Reliability Engineering. I will put a link in the chat here, and I will also say that they've got a YouTube channel. Did you see what I did there? I pushed a button I shouldn't have pushed. Stay awake, everybody. It could all change. So yes, they were on. It's on YouTube. So let me just look for their video section, because I did a talk with. Gosh, it's when your browser defaults to Bing, and then you try and search for things. It's like, yes, these are all the right answers, but in all the wrong places.
You should change that.
Well, the thing is that I have like different browsers for different purposes. So I actually use Microsoft Edge for all things.
Hey, Mark here. I'm the co-founder of
all things streaming related for work. So let me just bring up these videos. Oh, of course, it's not being published. I tell you what you'll do. If you go above my head, there's a link to our Discord channel. I will post a link to my talks. There are already links to my talks in the events channel. I'll post them in the general channel after we've finished talking here. So that's what I've been doing. I did a talk on 5 best security practices for production-ready containers. And spoiler alert, there was more than 5. So I looked at implementing container best practice and why that's a good starting point. And then we looked at stuff we've covered before, like a software bill of materials and security analysis. But then there was a few new bits, like when layer caching can actually degrade the security profile of your container images. And I looked at let's build the container images with lots of different base images and container composition techniques. So Alpine and Distroless, Debian and Ubuntu, and compare the security outlook across those different techniques. And can we get to a container that has 0 vulnerabilities and is smaller than Alpine? And the answer to the question is yes, we can. And if you want to know how, then that video will instruct you as to the common tips and techniques in order to get there. So we are here today because BigPod has been working on a blog post for the Slim.AI website, which I think is going to go live sometime next week. So we're going to do a little preview of that. We get asked common questions about DockerSlim and how it works. A good friend of ours, Alan Pope, recently referred to what DockerSlim does as voodoo magic. So we're going to try and demystify the voodoo magic in DockerSlim. Is there anything you want to add to that description, or is that about right?
That's about right.
Okay. So we have 5 questions, and I think we can answer those. So I'm going to pitch those questions. These are the top 5 that we've surveyed from the community. But if you have other questions, please do ask. We will do our best to answer them. And if we can't satisfactorily answer them here, we will find the answer to the question. And again, if you join Discord above my head, in fact, it was posted in the chat by the chatbot just a moment ago. Join our Discord and we can follow up there. So, BigPod, are you ready for question 1?
Yes.
Okay. And this is definitely the most common question. I was at KubeCon 3 weeks ago, and every time we said we can make your container images 10 to 30 times smaller, the next question was, well, how do you do that? So the question is, how does DockerSlim work under the hood?
Under the hood, DockerSlim works through a system called ptrace, which is what we use as a sensor to see what files your executable opens, checks, stuff like that. And then we know those files and we copy them to a scratch image, completely empty image for Docker, and we just fill those into that scratch image. So that's how we create a single layer and get only those files that are required. But sometimes those files don't get detected that they are accessed, or maybe they weren't accessed during the hot path you tested. So we use command line arguments to add additional files to the scratch image.
Right. So it's mechanisms of tracing in order to determine what the application is doing. And I think alongside that tracing, there's also some syscall analysis as well, right?
Yes.
And that gives us a unique insight into what the application is really doing. So in addition to be able to build some knowledge about what the application uses, what we can also do is see at a syscall level what it's doing, and that enables DockerSlim to also generate seccomp and to some degree AppArmor profiles, which you can then use to better secure those container images based on what they actually require from the host system. So there's a double whammy there. If you've built up all of this deep application knowledge, there's some additional trade-offs. And once all of this tracing and analysis has been done and we've worked out what the app does, what's the output of DockerSlim? What does it create?
OCI compliant image based on Scratch with single layer where everything is inside a single layer.
Right. So the output is a single layer container image that is derived from the fat container that it observed and only contains those components that were accessed whilst that application was running.
And important note that this is OCI compliant and can be run on anything from Podman, Docker, Kubernetes, which can run Containerd, or anything else.
Right, got that. So OCI compliant container can be deployed anywhere. I would just like to take a brief moment to welcome back some old friends. So hello, Esme and our podcast, welcome back. Hello, the dumbest idiot, welcome to the stream for the first time. Also, the Geek Gone Crazy, welcome for the first time. And Lucid Links, who I believe is Adam. Hello, Adam, welcome back. Thanks for stopping by. So, hopefully, we've got a question here. Let me see if I've got the technology to... Oh, gosh. We're having a technology fail. I'm going to have to do this the old-fashioned way and read some words. So, Ali asks, if it's not on your list, what does the AI in Slim.AI stand for? They then say, I already know the answer, but I had a prior assumption that turned out to be incorrect. So, Ali, traditionally, we have said that the AI in Slim.AI stands for application intelligence. But I think, given that it's some fairly complex heuristics that are actually running under the hood, and we're looking at some ways to improve that behavior, I think in the not too distant future, we're just going to own the AI as artificial intelligence, because that's what people recognize the AI to mean, and we're not far away from being able to say that's genuinely what we're doing. So maybe that's a slightly different answer from the one you've had in the past, but it should be consistent with what you've heard before and where we're planning on going. So the Geek Gone Crazy says, so how would someone automate this? Oh, we will get to that. So we've got that question in the list. We'll come back to that one. So I think what we'll do is we'll return to the 5 questions and see what new questions that throws up from those of you that are following along. So the next question is this. What type of applications work best with DockerSlim?
The best work web apps, because you can use HTTP probe with them, which is an automated probe, which is essentially a crawler which goes through all of your accessible endpoints and hits them and activates everything that is behind them. So that's why it's the most easy to use, as most of the time you only need to enter the image name and it will do everything like magic. Like voodoo magic, really.
Yeah, that's the voodoo magic bit, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you've got a port exposed and it's listening, DockerSlim can do a good job of minimizing your container without any additional inputs and tuning. DockerSlim does have a plethora of options to guide what it does whilst it's doing the minification process. Eric, who's here with us, who goes by our podcast in chat, has some experience of that, working with our containers where we used include paths to make sure that untouched parts of the app in some execution code paths got included regardless, for example. I wrote a blog post on community.slim.ai which talks about how to use probes and includes, and that's ways to instruct DockerSlim to go and look at particular URLs. Maybe you've got an API endpoint that you want it to pass in a particular way, or maybe you have static assets inside your container image and you always want all of those things included. So there's a number of ways you can guide its the way it observes the container. Now that said, on the Slim SaaS platform, so that's the URL above my head, click the Get Started button. We're building out the minification and optimization features there, which kind of guide you down a path based on the application characteristics. So there are some pre-canned ones there, one for specifically Nuxt apps, for server-related apps, for, I think, command line applications that don't have a port exposed. So you can do more, and if you don't want to combat the many hundreds of options that DockerSlim has, you may want to start with the Slim SaaS platform. You can instruct the SaaS platform to create configuration and profiles that expose the full capability of DockerSlim. But it's got some pre-canned starting points which may get you a long way. So hopefully that question has been covered, and this next question I think touches on what the Geek Gone Crazy was asking. So the next question we got is, how do I integrate DockerSlim into my CICD process?
Well, it's standard like every other utility with a command line interface. You can just enter the command into a CICD pipeline. I know modes that GitLab, CI, and they just enter line after line scripts, and it's essentially the same thing. You have a DockerSlim command line interface, and you do DockerSlim build, the name of the image. That's the most simple process for web apps. And
so
output will be an image.
Okay, so I've posted a link in the chat here, and if you're watching this on YouTube, it will be in the description of the video after the fact, which is a link to a blog post we put up a couple of months ago, which is one look at how you can integrate DockerSlim into your CI/CD pipeline. But I was kicking around the idea of doing very specific tutorials for integrating DockerSlim into GitHub Actions, into GitLab runners and CI/CD there, into Jenkins, because turns out that's still remarkably popular, Circle CI and Travis and all the rest of it. So we'll build out those guides based on each of the popular CI/CD platforms. But as Primoz says, whatever you can do in your CI by calling an executable, you can use that to run DockerSlim. You can also, I believe, put DockerSlim inside your container image and have it operate from within inside your own image as well.
Maybe.
You've never tried that one, I take it.
You can take, you have a pre-built image of DockerSlim, which if you pass it a Docker socket, can run inside Docker container.
Yeah,
and that's how it can operate inside a Docker environment.
Yeah. So I can see a couple of questions coming in. and I'm going to save those ones for a bit later. So Adam, I've seen your question, and the Geek Gone Crazy seen yours too. We'll circle back to those when we've got through these first 5. They're good questions and we have answers, I assure you. So question 4 is, what if my minified container stops working? How do I debug it?
The best way to check why your container has stopped working is by using Slim.AI's diffing web app, which allow you to see the differences between your non-slimmed and slim container. This can help you understand which files are missing and were removed in the minification process. Once equipped with this information, you can add flags like include flags and add those files directly into DockerSlim, into your container through DockerSlim.
Yes, and I was just wondering if the pull request exists here. I know that whilst we were at KubeCon, there was a mini hackathon taking place. I can't see the pull request for looking at the moment.
There
so we had
is.
Which one is it?
The one
Which
you
one?
just had mouse on.
This one?
No, bit lower.
That one?
One more. One
oh,
more.
There it is. Yes. Here it is. So, this landed, 18 days ago. So, this is a new, is it unreleased? I'll have to go and check. I think it's unreleased, but it's coming very soon. This is a debug command, so you can effectively attach like a debug sidecar container to DockerSlim in order to debug your minified containers, because obviously there's been a lot of files and binaries removed from the Slim container, and this gives you the mechanism to attach an instrumented container to the minified container so that you can perform some debugging. So that is coming very soon. Anything you want to add on that one?
IPC namespaces and networking, so it's directly connected to your container.
Yeah. And we met Dan at KubeCon, who basically did the large slice of that work. So coming very soon. So that will improve the experience if you end up with a broken container. As Primoz says, you can use the Slim SaaS platform to do deep container exploration and diffing and what have you. But now there's also an advanced debugging capability coming to DockerSlim as well. So the last question that we have from our common questions is this. Does DockerSlim work with Podman or other container runtimes?
For this, the answer is pretty simple. No. At the backend, you can only use Docker. But as I said before, you can run the images on anything you want. It supports OCI compliant images.
So that's true. So once you've created a minified container, you can run it anywhere that containers run. Although this was a question that we got an awful lot at KubeCon, and something we've been talking about internally. And in fact, another thing that was worked on while we were at KubeCon was adding the ability to run DockerSlim in K8s. And that's a first step towards adding support for additional container runtimes. So I anticipate we will be adding support for the likes of Podman and Containerd in due course.
Yes, but the system that will be used for Kubernetes is a bit different for what will be used for Podman and others, because with Kubernetes you will actually watch what is happening in the pod or in the container in a pod, and then use Docker to add those things to the image.
Right. Indeed. So the answer to the question is no, currently no Containerd or Podman support, but I think that's going to be a priority for us. It's clearly a much requested feature. You know, when you're in a large conference center full of 5,000 container enthusiasts, and lots of them are telling you they want support for other things other than Docker, you need to pay close attention to that. So those are the first 5 questions that we had based on our community feedback. And I see that there were 2 questions at least from some of you here in chat. So I think, oh dear, no, the technology is not working today. I was going to try and bring up the overlays. They're not going to go. So let's just circle back here. Oh no, here we go. No, we're in business. Here we go. It has woken up. So one question that I missed was right then, here we go. So this is from Lucid Links, which is Adam. And Adam asks, are the DockerSlim images compatible with security tools like Trivy? So security tools like Trivy also include Gripe and Sneak and Claire. And in fact, last week's stream, we had Eric Smalling on from Sneak, and we discussed some of this. And the answer to that question is currently no. But it's not all bad
news. No. Because they work on packages like that come from npm, pip, which are self-contained, but they don't work on stuff like packages.
Right.
That is because during the removal process, we also remove package managers, which is what the security scanners rely on.
Right. So there's 2 halves to this question. If you've installed packages via pip, npm, Ruby gems, things of that nature, then yes, you can,
depending on how it works, the package manager and the package itself.
Yeah, it's possible in some cases you can get some security scanning results. I would say at the moment you can't rely on the results of security scanners on minified containers. And the talk that I gave yesterday at Comp42, I actually showed how you can use the Slim SaaS or the Slim.AI Docker extension, both of which are free to use, in order to take your security analysis, use from Trivy, for example, against your fat container, and then in many cases a matter of seconds, maybe to do the whole thing a few minutes, verify that those vulnerable components are no longer in your minified container. So there is like a stopgap solution, but the longer answer is this is something we're working on and we intend to solve, because again, the feedback that we've got is that people want to be able to run their existing security scanners on their minified container images and be able to sort of trust the results. So we're working on that. Right then, so we have another question here from the Geek Gone Crazy. It's a longer question. It says, what I'm wondering about is repeatability. With Docker files, we get a lot of predictability in what will actually be in the image. I can run it many times and the output should be the same. Yes. This seems like it introduces a component with some unpredictability. Is there a way to make it slim in the exact same way every time? So the answer to that question, I think, is yes, but no. And I will explain and jump in at the end here, Primoz. So I'm going to say this. The best way to run the minification process with DockerSlim is you can instruct DockerSlim or the Slim SaaS to execute something during the observability stage. And the best thing to do is hook that into your integration tests to ensure that the depth of your execution paths in your application get touched in order for the observe to be as deep as possible. And whilst that won't, and that will give you a good chance of success. The issue is that as your app develops over time, it won't be the same, because as your integration tests develop and your app develops, then that's going to touch new code paths, and that's going to pull in additional requirements from the container. So it will be an organic change over time. So, Primoz, what have I got wrong there?
Your application, your container should be, at the end of the day, repeatable with DockerSlim, because if you have, let's say, a HTTP probe, it should run exactly the same every time. Problem is, it depends on how your app is variable. If let's say it decides on one run to do something, on another run to do something else, then it cannot be repeatable, because it uses your app to see what it needs. But there's some points where it cannot be repeatable, and actually even Docker files should not be repeatable. Great example of that is doing the updates. In my opinion, you should be doing updates at the start of the Docker file, as a lot of the time you remove some vulnerabilities. Because they may ship, the image may ship 3 days ago, but yesterday it got an update for vulnerability, but the new version wasn't revved up yet. Its repeatability is something of a questionable thing, whether it's a good or a bad thing with Docker containers. But in general, DockerSlim should be fairly repeatable.
If your app doesn't change, the resulting minified container should also, be unchanging. And that point that Primoz is just touching on about, doing your updates, that was a specific topic in my talk yesterday at Comp42, which was 5 best security practices for your production-ready containers. And not only did I simply say, do your updates, I explain precisely why you should be doing your updates, and why the advice of days gone by of not doing updates in Docker files is, by and large, really bad advice. So I'm not going to give the spoilers away here, but if you go and watch that, I cover that topic in some detail, including even looking at why distroless is not the security panacea you might think it is, for example.
If I may, I would like to share an anecdote with you.
Sure.
Everyone. Yesterday I was doing some work on examples for DockerSlim, and I was testing them in, multiple times. And for everything I have caching disabled, because, it creates problems that you've never seen before. And so I had to slim a container multiple times, and I can say every time I got exact same size. I haven't gone further into, but exact same size, which would suggest I got exact same container out. Without any kind of caching.
And in fact, that makes an interesting point. So, for example, let's assume, in terms of repeatability of DockerSlim, let's say we compose our Docker file using an Ubuntu base image, and we needed to install something with apt-get to satisfy our application. In one container image, we just do apt-get install, and we install a whole bunch of stuff, and we end up with a 500 megabyte container. In the other container image, it's exactly the same, except we do apt-get install -- no recommends, and the resulting container is 120 megabytes. Functionally the same, but one's got a load more packages inside it because of the way the package managers work. If you take both those container images and run DockerSlim on them, you will end up with the exact same output container from both of those minification processes. So that's an interesting, experiment in itself.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question here from Ali. Let me just bring that up. So Ali says, so I think this is related to the Geek Gone Crazy's earlier question. Are slimmed images a strict subset of the original, or can new files be introduced? Do you want to start with this one, Big Pod?
Yes, I can start with that. Sometimes new files can be introduced. For example, with Python, it creates some PyC files. Those can be included automatically, but there are ways to disable, to stop from including those files if we do not want them to be included.
Yeah. So Python bytecode is a good example of something that will be in a minified container, but not in a fat container, for example, in some cases. Another good example is, let's imagine that a database gets instantiated inside your container image, through integration tests or something like that. Unless you instruct DockerSlim that this is something that should be excluded, you could, stand up a database file inside your container. And if you have lock files and they don't get cleaned up elegantly, then you could leave lock files behind, because in order for DockerSlim to do its thing, it has to start the container and run the app inside the container. So anything that the app creates will be preserved in the output container unless you expressly tell DockerSlim to exclude particular things.
Yes.
And on that also reminds me of another interesting use case for DockerSlim, which I hadn't thought of until it came up a couple of times at KubeCon. And there are now people that are using DockerSlim just for policy enforcement. So one of the advantages of minifying a container is you can significantly reduce your attack surface. But that's, it's a fairly deep minification process. But let's suppose you have well instrumented containers you're using to iterate fast for development, but you want to have a sort of a sanitized version for production. You can use, just like the exclude rules in DockerSlim, to not do any minification other than defining a list of executables and paths that you always want removed from the containers. So you don't do the sort of the huge minification, you just remove all of the stuff you really know you don't want in a production image. In the event that you have a container, you have a bug in your app that gets exploited and somebody lands inside your container image, you've created a container image that is got no unnecessary shells or interpreters or QA test, dev or infrastructure tooling inside it, so that the would-be attacker can't use that against you and your infrastructure to disrupt your operations. So that's an emerging use case for DockerSlim.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got to the ends of the questions that we had and the end of the questions that we've been asked. If there are any additional questions about DockerSlim and how you might use it, ask now. And if you're watching this after the fact and you think, oh, I've got a really good question and nobody asked it, then above my head at the bottom of the page is links to our Discord. Do join us there. Ask your questions. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions as we see them. So, nothing new. I think that's it. I wonder what we'll be doing next week. Next week could be a big week, because Pete is back after being out for some time. So I don't know yet if Pete will join me on a live stream next week. But Pete and I haven't done a live stream together for about 7 weeks now. So we'll look at that. And also, we've got a YouTube channel. youtube.com/SlimDevOps. Get subscribed there, because we may be multi-streaming to both platforms next week. So, and if you subscribe now, you may see the very first test streams that we'll be putting up over the course of the week. Yeah, says me, it's been 7 weeks since we've streamed, but Pete's been out of the office for 6. Yeah, so he's a new proud father, and he's been, having some quality time at home. So there we go. So yeah, sign up on YouTube. We archive these videos there, but we'll also start streaming to both places, and maybe some other endpoints as well, to capture a larger audience. Right. Well, thanks for joining me, Big Pod. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Not really.
Okay. Thanks for coming, everyone. The Geek Gone Crazy, thank you for stopping by. Thanks for your questions. Our pleasure. Keep an eye out here, YouTube. Join our Discord. We're doing fun stuff. We always value people trying our stuff out and giving us feedback. So, try it all out. So I think we'll finish up there. Thanks for coming, everyone. And we'll see you. We'll be back on Thursday next week. Obviously, this week's was delayed because of the conferences this week. I wonder what the topic might be. I may do some of the deep dive into the security best practices for production containers. So not a rerun of what I did at Comp42, but more of a sort of an interactive, deeper covering of some of those topics. So if you're interested in that, let me know. If there's something from that talk you feel is missing or you'd like to see expanded on, let us know in Discord, and I'll cover that next week. Right then, thanks very much, Primoz, and thanks everyone for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.